Thank you for tuning in once again to his Vine and Fig Tree podcast. My name is Kurt Olson. I'm your host. I'm coming to you on the afternoon of October 22nd, 2025. A few quick things I just want to bring to your attention this week uh, with some things in the news. The first one is the No Kings protest. A lot of people might be familiar with this. Happened last Saturday. Um, Multiple left-wing groups, including the usual suspect George Soros, has his tentacles involved in the had his tentacles involved in the funding of this. These people are bragging about 2,700 communities and 7 million people and all this other stuff. And even Ted Cruz, Republican Senator Ted Cruz, is calling on Republicans to take this kind of protest seriously, um, rather than just kind of be dismissive of it. Um, because you might remember back in 2008 9, um, when we had the meltdown of our economy, or near meltdown of our economy, and we had too big to fail emerge on the scene in American public policy lexicon, as we did the $700 billion bailout known as TARP. We then did cash for clunkers. We also did a bailout for the automotive industry with Chevy and or GM and uh, Chrysler Dodge, um, taking advantage of that. Um, and that led to the Tea Party movement developing in 2009-10, and ultimately impacting the midterm elections in 2010. And we it's hard to say if this is going to generate the same kind of response. Midterm elections, the party in power typically does not do well, so we're going to find that out another year from now. But just a couple observations about the No Kings protest. I mean, see, these people make this protest based on the belief that Donald Trump has descended to authoritarian and autocratic measures as president to impose his will. They're citing the ICE raids in various locations and other things. Well, if Donald Trump was a real king, those protests would never have happened. He would have he would have gotten wind of it, and he would have quashed it like a bug, and the people responsible for it would have either been thrown in jail, killed. Why? That's how kings roll, more often than not. Um, if Donald Trump was a king, the government currently would not be shut down. If Donald Trump was a king, um, we wouldn't have a Supreme Court, we wouldn't have a Congress. And as much as I have issues with how both of those bodies are functioning, including the executive, um, this is not the makeup of a king. So there's those kinds of observations. Um, Another one is if you did not complain about how the real kings and queens responded to COVID, the people who basically said, listen to us or else, if you didn't have a problem with what happened during COVID, you need to sit down and be quiet about no kings. Um, and frankly, we can trace some of this back. Okay, I just took some time to just kind of do some reflection on where some of this autocratic behavior started. I would argue some could say we started to see some things in the late Clinton years that kind of put us on this track. But I think it really started following 9/11 when we had the Patriot Act approved by the Congress, because what the Patriot Act did is give sanction to um, the government to violate our due process rights and spy on us. And at the time, it was library books, phone calls, emails, text messages, and then they finally got rid of library books, but they're still spying on us. And we see this even with the telecommunications providers. You might be having a conversation in your house or maybe even at work, and telecommunications, whoever the whatever the network is, whether it's Apple, whether it's Verizon, whether it's T-Mobile, I don't care who it is. Conversation gets heard, and the next thing you know, you've got an ad popping up, basically associated with that conversation. So I would say some of this autocratic behavior from our government started with the Patriot Act, and the administrative state, the people that are involved in the actual apparatus of government, um, started doing certain things following the passage of the Patriot Act. And then during the Obama years, what we end up getting is he spied on his political opponents with the IRS. He harassed at least two journalists that I'm aware of, um, Cheryl Atkinson and James Rosen. Um, we had the government tell the Little Sisters of the Poor to get in line on their rulings on abortion or else, and other things. And so Obama likes to paint himself as this bastion of unity for the American people. Nothing could be further from the truth. He was supposed to be the the post-racial president, and he was the most racial president. Um, we continued to see it during Trump one, with a variety of things. Oh yes, and during the Obama years, we also had sweeping changes of law that went by simply executive order. We had the DACA immigration plan that was just a stroke of a pen with an executive order, and then we also had changes to the Obamacare legislation that happened through executive order. And Donald Trump kind of continued some of that kind of stuff by executive order and has done so again in his second term. And Biden, he did a variety of autocratic things as well, sicking the DOJ on a variety of entities, ranging from parents to uh, pro-lifers, uh, a variety of others. And we've seen a steady progression here of the federal government, and no matter who's in charge, engaging in behavior that is very heavy-handed, that is very, I mean, and some people would even trace some of this back to Clinton, even with the Waco situation and Ruby Ridge, the stuff that happened there with the federal officials. So you know, to both parties are guilty of this. Both of them are. And for anyone to think otherwise is just they're not they're being disingenuous. So the No Kings protest, depending on your location, you also saw signs that were very anti-Christian. So the No Kings protest could also be called the No King protest, meaning they certainly don't want Jesus as king, as something that our society and our civilization that we kind of function by. And there's a because there's on the left, and especially the radical left, there's a very anti-God, anti-Christian, and many times it's brazen, it's in your face. So those are just observations from that, and we now have a government shutdown, and it's been going on for probably a good 3 weeks now, and uh, I've seen that this could go to at least Thanksgiving, perhaps longer. There are now reports that food stamp recipients uh, could very likely not be getting money beginning November 1st, um, as they are now impacted. And that's 28%. That's potentially 20 to 30% of the grocery business in the United States of America. Imagine that happening at wherever you live, the major grocers where you are located, and not just that, even the small mom and pop locations would be affected by that as well in varying ways, with loss of revenue and revenue that would not be regained once more likely than not once government was back in session and funded. So there's that. And now you also have the left just with their hair on fire over Trump's plans for the White House. We've had all kinds of additions to the White House over time. FDR had added a pool. Um, One of the other presidents between FDR and who was it? Nixon, um, added, was it a bowling alley, or was Nixon the one who added the bowling alley? Something like that. So we had a bowling alley added. We've had a movie theater added over time, and Reagan may have been responsible for that. We've had uh, Obama added a basketball court, and so there's a demolition scene um, on the side of the White House simply because Trump's adding a ballroom. Now, I'm not a fan of where some of the money's coming from, but you know, presidents have done this, and Trump won't be the last president to do this. Even though some people on the left are certain Trump's going to be the very last president because he's a dictator. This is this is the kind of rhetoric these people engage in, and they are losing their minds over this one thing. So those are two things. Well, three things: the No Kings protest, government shutdown, and the White House remodeling. And then on Monday there was and yesterday there was a religious holiday uh, recognized in the Oval Office, Diwali, which is a Eastern religious holiday that involves light overcoming the darkness, and some of these polytheistic gods overtaking evil spirits. Um, it's hard to not call it what it is: demonic. Um, Hinduism, and Hindus would be very unhappy to hear me say this, but it's a false religion. Um, Hindus are allowed to believe in the gods of Hinduism, but it is a false religion. And the president was lighting some kind of a lamp or candle for this. And as someone who is a follower of Christ in this country, uh, supposedly Trump has this faith office headed by Paula White, and how does this kind of thing get missed by her? How does something like this just all of a sudden happen, and it's emerged on social media, and that's how we find out about it, and we don't hear about some kind of a discussion behind the scenes? Should the president actually be doing that? And frankly, America was established to be a Christian nation. Period. Multiple founders said that the only way this system of self government survives, functions, long lasting, is for the people, the citizens, to be self governed by the morality of the Bible. That's not the morality of Hinduism. That's not the morality of Islam. That's not the morality of, you know, Buddhism. It's the morality of the Bible. And this country is a Judeo Christian, has a Judeo Christian tradition that is Jewish and Christian. When I specifically say Christian, I'm thinking of Anglo Protestant. And that's not to say that Catholicism doesn't have some roots in there as well, because there were some colonies that did have that. But the roots of this country, from the colonies to the birth of the country, is a Judeo Anglo Protestant background. Period. And it it's hard to people can attempt to deny that. People can attempt to reject that and go away from that. But that doesn't change reality. And reality is America is a Judeo Christian nation, period. And now I also believe we have been a post Christian nation for pretty much my entire lifetime, heading toward 60 decades or 6 decades. And how this Hindu celebration from the Oval Office and Trump's participation in it got missed by the Faith Office. Um, Paula White has some explaining to do um, on multiple things, and that's just one. Last thing I want to bring to your attention: in the last 2 to 3 weeks, starting with, I'm shocked I'm saying this. I'm stunned that I'm saying this, but when I saw Bill Maher, and Bill Maher isn't exactly a clean comic. He's known for blurting out a few profanities in his time as well. But Bill Maher brought attention to the persecution of Christians in Nigeria on his show a few weeks back. And since that period of time, we've seen kind of a growing chorus happen. And even Trump said something about it in his remarks at the General Assembly of the United Nations back in late September. And then the persecution has not changed. We're talking we're talking between 50 and 60,000 people, if not more, killed in Nigeria alone in the last from like 2009 to the present. And the world has dithered. And we have had everyone from the UN to the Nigerian government, a variety of people, explain it away and not call it what it is. Muslims attacking Christians because of their faith. That's what's going on. And I woke up this morning to something in my social media feed on X. The oldest church in Africa, in the Sudan, burned to the ground. And then there was word last week that China launched a crackdown on house churches with Ezra Jin. And he's got a Chinese name, but they call him Ezra Jin. Being one of the pastors who was taken into custody. And the CCP is good for the persecution of Christians. Don't get me wrong. They've got political prisoners, they've got religious prisoners, they've got all kinds in the CCP under Xi Jinping. And that isn't even to mention the ongoing crisis in northwest China with the Uyghur Muslims. And world says nothing. We've got a few we've got a few think tanks and people in various sectors saying things, but very few are screaming about what happened in China. And meanwhile, the Turks eh, and Donald Trump views Recep Erdogan, the president of Turkey, who has dictatorial powers in that country. Donald Trump regards him as an ally. Why? I don't know. Is it simply because he's a member of NATO? I don't know. This guy has done nothing to be a friend of the United States over time. And he being Recep Erdogan, has launched various things against the Kurds in Iraq, against Armenia, and a variety of others. And the world says nothing. And for Bill Maher to be the voice of defending the persecuted church is just stunning to me, because we have churches in the United States of America that still don't talk about the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. And let's be clear about Nigeria, folks. Okay, it's Africa, it's over there. We don't need to care about it. Nigeria is the largest country by population on the African continent. And This has been going on for heading toward 20 years. And the idea that Bill Maher is now the voice of defending Nigerian Christians is just unheard of to me. And very recently there was a soccer match in Europe, and the Romanian soccer team, men's soccer team, had a statement about defending Nigerian Christians. I mean, there are people that know about it, but America is supposed to be this leader of religious freedom and defending faith. And far too many in our Congress, in our executive branch, and the churches in this country, far too many just don't know or don't care. And both of them are equally bad. And I mean, this is a plea for us as Christ followers to pray for people on the other side of the world who are not in situations like we are. And they are brothers and sisters in Christ, and we're going to see them in heaven one day. Period. And when the pressure is brought on Nigeria to do something, I don't know. In fact, I don't know how true this is, but I've heard a potential private military group based in the United States. And again, I don't know if this is just rumor and there's been some chatter about it, or if this is actually going to manifest itself. But there's been talk of a private military group in the United States of America going to Nigeria to defend those folks. And upon the time that happened, there will be some noise brought about it and attention brought about it, because there will be Americans now over there um, taking matters into their own hands. I've said my piece, at least for now, but this is the time to acquaint people with the famous Dietrich Bonhoeffer quote. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the pastor in Germany who took a stand against not just Adolf Hitler, but the churches in Germany in the 1930s that were aligning themselves with the Third Reich. And Bonhoeffer said no, and he was part of the confessing church. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer has this famous quote about, you know, um, not to act is to act, not to speak is to speak. And there is, let me read the two verses. I believe it's Proverbs 24 as I now have my Bible in my hands. This is my trimline Bible, so the print is small. Proverbs 24. Pardon me as I'm trying to get there and my fingers cooperating. Yeah, 24. Deliver those who are being taken away to death, and those who are staggering to slaughter. Oh, hold them back. If you say, see, we did not know this, does he not consider it who weighs the hearts? And does he not know it who keeps your soul? And he will not render to, and will he not render to man according to his work. That's Proverbs 24:11 and 12. You know, we can't claim ignorance as Christians when this kind of stuff is going on. That that doesn't work. So, and frankly, the mission of this podcast, which is freedom and liberty, yes, I would love to see it extended to the folks in Nigeria, the folks in China, the folks in Turkey, variety of places all across the planet. But as I'm not naive enough to believe that that's a thing that's going on. And um, one of the issues this podcast will bring to light is the plight of the persecuted church. And so that's all I have for this week on this edition of the podcast. Have a new column dropping on um, Sunday. Just some additional things being done and said about revival in America, trying to bring some clarity to that. And that's all the teaser I'm going to give on that. Um, for those who watch this, read my column. Thank you for doing so. And we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. And until next time, God bless and goodbye.